Yesterday we got the Assassin's Creed Shadows Reddit AMA, and it was such a disaster that it's taken me this long to get around to speaking about it, because, look, this was not it. So for those who weren't aware, the devs of Assassin's Creed Shadows, the guys in charge of the post-launch content, hopped onto Reddit of all places to answer fan questions about what was coming up in the future, what sort of things we can expect from the post-launch of Shadows after the roadmap that we've currently got, a bit about the DLC, a bit about like parkour updates and some little tidbits. Well, that's what they said anyway. That sounds like a lot. To be honest, one of my major complaints with the way this whole thing was handled was I don't think these guys actually had any news. They didn't have anything to drop. So when people were like asking questions to them, they just had to keep denying it, and, well, not even denying, just straight up rejecting anything people were saying. If you read through these questions, and believe me, I was reading through these questions, it started at 3 o'clock yesterday and it ran until 5, and I noticed just the gaps in between, like, answers was very big. Like, every 10 minutes we were getting one answer. And I was pretty concerned. I was like, why is this taking so long just to get some of these questions answered? And then I noticed, like, some of them were the same person. Like, the same guy got 4 of his questions answered straight off the bat. So then I was sitting there thinking, is this rigged? Are they only going to answer the easy questions that they've, like, submitted themselves? But thankfully that wasn't the case. Like, as this AMA went on, we did start to get into the meat and potatoes of what fans were looking for, and I think that's when it started to, like, it's when it started to decline. I felt like we had 3 guys doing this AMA, and I think they were backed into a corner almost immediately, because when you look at the list of things they were going to talk about in the AMA, they were like, I don't think they were prepared for Assassin's Creed fans. I think they were prepared for RPG fans. I can't believe this, but you know Yoraptor, one of the biggest Assassin's Creed YouTubers in terms of like news and updates and insider information, he asked a question about damage numbers being added into the game. And I was like, bro, read the room. Nobody in this AMA is asking anything about RPG mechanics. They are only asking about returning features and characters and mechanics coming back. And the problem is, when you've got 3 guys who don't have anything new to add to the conversation, all they can do is turn you away or decline it or make it sound like, oh, well, that's something that, you know, we love social stealth, but in terms of Assassin's Creed Shadows, we just didn't feel it would fit. And it's like, okay, why did you bother answering the question then? I found that a great deal of the questions they were answering were ones that they didn't have an answer to, so what was the point? Unless it was to tamper expectations, because I genuinely think the point of these Reddit AMAs is to gather feedback regarding what they've already done and what they should be implementing in the future. The problem is, a lot of the stuff that people are asking for is so, like, impossible at this stage in Shadow's life cycle. It would require a massive team of, like, hundreds of people to fix some of these things or add some of these things. Whereas, I think it's very clear at this point that Shadows has probably got, like, maybe 20 to 30 people working on the post-game stuff, and everybody else has moved on. I'm not saying that that's a fact, don't take that as gospel, that's just my opinion. From what I'm seeing from the output we've had so far, it seems like very little work for like the amount of people who are working on Shadows to begin with. I think we've been left with a skeleton team, which on the plus side does mean that a lot of Shadows' content can start to come out a bit more accurately to what we want. Like the amount of people it would take to get through in order to get any decision made, we would have never had a parkour update. So I think the fact that the parkour is able to be switched even like a few months after the game's come out. And look, I work in marketing, I have to be like customer facing quite a lot of the time, writing emails and answering like customer complaints and stuff. I know when you need to turn on the PR voice, and it is not for Reddit, but the way it came across was like, we've had to really filter what we say in order to make it sound in a way that's not going to offend other studios or make it sound like what we've done in Shadows is a bad thing. Like, they always need to make it look like Shadows was a good thing. Everything they did in the game was a positive for the franchise, but also we love the other things that are going on, when it's really like, these are the improvements you should have made. Social stealth should have been in Shadows, and their only excuse for that is, oh well, we added like prone. And it's like, yeah, but why couldn't you do both? So before I get into like some of the stuff that's really bad, I do want to touch on like the one thing that I wanted to get out of this, and it's been answered, and it's a good thing. It's actually a good thing to come from this AMA, and it's legacy outfits. You know me, you've seen this channel, I'm all about outfits. I like the outfits in Assassin's Creed, reviewing them, analysing them, looking at the effects on them, and the bloody coattail physics. You know, I'm the outfits guy at this point, basically. And I'm very happy to say that they confirmed legacy outfits are going to be in Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I am so happy to say that. Like 3 months since the game came out, I am very relieved to say that we are finally going to get legacy outfits. Although it seemed like at first they were answering questions that included like mentions of legacy outfits. Like, they answered a question which asked, is there going to be legacy outfits in the game? And also like they asked about parkour. And I noticed that the guys answering only answered the message about the parkour and didn't touch on the outfits thing. It's only when the GOAT, Simon, or Simon, I don't know how you say your name, but when he entered the Q&A towards the end, he finally started to like actually answer some of these things. So he just straight up said, yes, we're going to be getting legacy outfits. It's more than likely they're going to be free rewards at the end of the projects tab. And if you have no idea what that is, that's like their free battle pass. They've just brought out a new one with the New Game Plus update, and it looks like it's going to take you like 4 to 5 weeks to earn it, but eventually we will get legacy outfits. And they even said multiple. They said a plural, which they specifically emphasized, so I know we're going to get more than just one outfit. So hopefully it's more than just AC2 Ezio. I'm praying for Altair personally. I even have a whole video where I do my wish list of which outfits I'd like to see in Shadows, but that was before we knew like the format that these were going to be dished out to. So I am not expecting many of these. I'm thinking maybe 3 or 4 outfits by the end of the life cycle, but they could do more. I really hope, because Shadows has such a good cloth physics like system, and the outfits in Shadows all look really good. Like, I cannot really critique any of the outfits in Shadows because they are really good. This has to be the one that smashes it out the park for these legacy outfits. The other assassin outfits in Assassin's Creed have been like half-arsed ever since their respective game. Like, whenever Ezio's outfit appears, there's always something wrong with it. Altair's has been through a meat grinder and back out of it again, with a lot of sticky substances keeping his coattails glued together. Like, the legacy outfits have been a massive problem. I think Mirage did do a very good job with the outfits that it added. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than Valhalla. So I hope that Shadows continues this trend and the legacy outfits they add are actually good. Alright, now we've got to get into some of the wild answers, and I mean, there were some questions here that I thought, damn, like, it's very ballsy for people to ask these sorts of questions, but for the answers to be so bad, I just think, like, these devs answering the questions, I think they dropped themselves in it on a few of these questions, and the fans are not happy. I remember on my Discord yesterday, spending like an hour after the AMA finished just like ranting with people about the state of some of these answers. So like the first one that puts into question the devs like knowledge of the series. So we know in Assassin's Creed Shadows at the end of the campaign we get, well, I say the end of the second act, we get Hattori Hanzo and his stupid questline about being a simp. And we find out that the Assassins were actually founded in Japan by a Spanish dude who got rejected by the Assassins. He broke all the tenets, he came over to Japan and started the Brotherhood anew in Japan, which obviously goes completely against the law that was already established over 10 years ago, that Xiao Yun's apprentice was the one to move the Brotherhood to Japan, giving more of a legacy to Ezio than he had before, because obviously Xiao Yun was his apprentice and her apprentice went on to found an entire brotherhood in a whole new country. So that's a pretty important part of the lore. So for that to be completely retconned in Shadows to be just some random Spanish guy, I was very disappointed by that, and I think a lot of other people were too. So somebody asked straight up, why did you retcon memories? And I thought that was a very ballsy question. And the way that Ubisoft answered this was by saying that it could have still happened. Like, what do you mean? It happened or it didn't? Or did you guys just not know about memories when you were writing this game? I think I know the right answer there. The guy seems to imply that Xiao Yun's apprentice may have founded a part of the Brotherhood, but this Spanish guy founded the part that we're in, and that these things can simultaneously coexist unless stated explicitly in the game that it didn't happen. Any Assassin's Creed lore could exist, and I really don't like that mindset because it means they could literally do anything now, and as long as they don't counteract something that's already happened or like explicitly stop one timeline from happening, anything in Assassin's Creed, it's like a multiverse, anything in Assassin's Creed can happen. And yeah, that's not for me. I'm not one of these people who's like totally strict on the lore, but when you do something so massive without any reason for doing it, it just strikes me as a mistake. So I think that's what happened here. Obviously they're trying to backpedal on that and say, oh well, if you liked memories, that can be your canon. And it's like, well, that might work for certain franchises, but not Assassin's Creed, where you are literally trying to retell history as historically accurate as possible and stuff like that, but you can't even get your own timeline, like the fictional timeline, lined up. Also, a really funny question that somebody asked was like, are we getting the Discovery Tour back? Because the Discovery Tour was in Origins and Odyssey, and I think it was in Valhalla as well. It was a big part of like the educational push for Assassin's Creed to be historically accurate, and these guys just went, nope. They just straight up said, nope, we cannot do that in Shadows. We chose to put in those little balls that you can find in the open world with like historical facts. That is their replacement of the Discovery Tour, which in my opinion is not really the same thing. It's a much lesser version. Somebody asked as well if we were going to get an ally for our League of the Hidden Blade. Oh god, I'll still never get over that. If we were going to get a League member that would use a Hidden Blade in combat, and they were like, sorry, we would have to develop new mechanisms for this. This is far too much work. We couldn't do all that. We'd have to create like a new Hidden Blade combat system and stuff like that. And it's like, and you know, that's fair until you realise Assassin's Creed Brotherhood came out 15 years ago. We're also not going to be able to get Naue and Yasuke as like their own allies, because apparently they would have to like completely redesign the characters, like create a whole new mold of the characters. And yes, this would be true, because they're going to be using much higher polygons than any other character in the game. Create a new model then, just make a lower quality version and put it in the game. I don't see how this is a massive deal. I don't know, if anybody knows in the comments why it would be so difficult to create an NPC version of a character that already exists in the game as a playable character, then I would be very interested to know like what the difference is there. And the final thing we're going to mention in this video is of course the Basim in the room. Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Assassin's Creed Mirage. We got two games building up our boy Basim. Whether you think they were a success or a failure, that's a whole different debate, but basically we had the setup. We had Basim coming into the modern day at the end of Valhalla. We had the start of something, which we hadn't had since Assassin's Creed 3, which was like a direction in the story. Because Origins and Odyssey were just faffing about. They didn't have a direction for the story to go in. Valhalla chose to very quickly wrap up whatever plotline they had going with Layla and set us off with Basim and say, right, this is concretely where we're going with the modern day. And then Shadows just turned Basim into a shadow. It got rid of him. He wasn't in the game. And instead we got a glowing white person and like a glowing beige person, with the guide and the Animus ego having like its own sentience, and The answer that they gave in this AMA made me howl with laughter, because they said that they didn't include Basim in Shadows because they already had complex characters that needed the screen time in the form of Eivor and the guide. Need I remind you, these characters have maybe 4 minutes of screen time throughout the entire game and appear in like 3 cutscenes, and one of those was only added last week. So I don't think there was like much room for these characters, but what do you mean? Why didn't you just put more time towards them? Was there an allocated number? Did you have to fit the quota of under 10 minutes of modern day story in the entire game? It is literally the game after Mirage and Valhalla, 2 games with the same character in it, and then this game just acts like they don't exist. And look, I said this as a joke yesterday, but I think it's legit. I don't think they know who Basim is. I don't think Ubisoft Quebec were paying any attention to what Montreal and Bordeaux were doing. So when it came round to their game, they just did their own thing. They just went in their own direction, and they probably had no idea that the modern day storyline was actually building up to anything, which doesn't help in the long run of making Shadows feel like an entry you have to play. Assassin's Creed does have this problem in general, where it's now an anthology series where the games don't really follow on from each other. You can pick up and play any Assassin's Creed now, from probably like Unity onwards. You can just play any of them, and you don't need any prior knowledge, which doesn't help in like retaining a fan base. And I think one of the big problems is you have characters like Basim, which a lot of people gravitated towards. There was a lot of people who liked Mirage, and so to just ditch the people who liked Mirage, ditch the people who liked Basim in Valhalla, and just say no, and then to come up with some really strange excuse that we have our own characters to deal with that are so complex and detailed, and we've written them so well, and it's like, that is not a valid reason for just dropping the story entirely just because you wanted to tell a different story. Another story which, by the way, I have never heard anybody speak about since the game came out. You may think it's amazing, but these characters talk so generically, like their dialogue is just generic questions about existence and stuff that doesn't lead to anything substantial. There may be an update that comes out where they add a brand new quest line that makes the Animus Eivor the best character in Assassin's Creed, but we haven't got that yet, so to use that as an excuse, as a basis for what you've currently established for this character, damn, like that one really got to me, to be honest. That really made me think, they just didn't even know Basim existed before this game came out, and there was no need for them to then sort of dig into him and say, oh well, he's not as complex as the characters we're building. But yeah, I've ranted about that enough. Obviously, all of this was building up to the idea of the post-launch content continuing after the close of Awaji. We're going to be getting another roadmap afterwards, so that is a good thing, and this seems to be market research for what they can and can't provide to us in the future. The answer is they can't do very much. I think we're pretty much just going to get a couple of free quest lines that hopefully match the quality of the Rufino one and delve more into the Templars and especially the Assassins. I feel like the Assassins aren't even in this game. But I don't know, I would expect maybe one more parkour update where they just address like manual jumps or maybe manual descents and stuff and like try and fix some of the animations. To be honest, I'm quite happy with where the parkour is in Shadows. I understand that it can improve, but for the kind of world they've given us, one where they openly admit they wanted to make a world that was more horizontal, and one that had like, the crouching, like going underneath buildings, and they weren't bothered about including big cities with high buildings and multi-stories, and they didn't want to build their world for parkour, which begs the question, why would you pick a setting that doesn't fit one of the core pillars of your franchise? But with that said, I want to end this video here. If you did enjoy, please like the video, subscribe for more Assassin's Creed content. Let me know down below, what was the biggest takeaway for you from this Reddit AMA? And I will see you in the next video.